Let not your heart be troubled. You are listening to the Sean Hannity Radio Show podcast. You know, it puts life into perspective, and I don't know when I first predicted. Didn't I say, Lauren, I know Linda's on vacation this week, that my greatest fear, worries, the type of thing that would keep me up at night, that it might actually end up what defines the Fox News channel. I'm sorry, not the Fox News channel. I'm reading something. What defines in every way the threat to freedom, humanity, and everything else, and what will define the Trump presidency is, in fact, North Korea.
Many times, yeah.
I mean, I've said it a whole bunch of times, and I wish it was one of those days I'm wrong. I so wish I was wrong today, because what we have now developing is not a good situation. Now, we did have last week, I thought it was really, really good news. If you get news from the Russiagate media, you probably don't even know the Trump administration. They'll never tell you the Destroy Trump media won a big victory diplomatically over the weekend, and it offered, frankly, the last best hope to stop North Korea without going to war. And I've been telling you there's no good answer as it relates to North Korea. And I'm not kidding when I say war. You've had the last three administrations, especially the Clinton administration, the Obama administration, literally kicking down the can for a total of 24 years, what was an emerging obvious danger. And now we're on the verge of a major conflagration with the North Koreans and the Democratic press and the Destroy Trump press. All they want to talk about is Russiagate. Russiagate doesn't matter today. And if what I think can happen ultimately happens, it's even worse than you think. Now, Investors Business Daily on Saturday, the UN Security Council voted new sanctions on the emerging nuclear threat of North Korea. Great. You even had China and Russia going along with it. It was a unanimous 15-0 vote imposing sanctions against North Korea for their recent intercontinental ballistic missile tests, including one just last week, followed by a week of pressure by Trump on both North Korea and its main allies, China and Russia. Last weekend, Trump signed the bill that imposes penalties on North Korea's shipping industry, along with new sanctions on Russia and intelligence agencies for their meddling in the election last year, which they've done in previous elections, which we're told they'll do in future elections. And Trump also recently got the EU to go along with other sanctions, against Russia for their interference in the eastern Ukraine. So he's taken a tough position against a country that's supposed to have so much on him. Meanwhile, Trump also ratcheted up his war of words against China, which is the right thing to do. It's in their geopolitical area. It's their bigger problem, not our bigger problem. And he tweeted out a little over a week ago, I'm very disappointed. In China, our foolish past leaders have allowed them to make hundreds of billions of dollars a year in trade, and yet they do nothing for us with North Korea, just talk. Well, we'll no longer allow this to continue. He goes, China could easily solve the problem. Well, they could in the sense that they have the ability to put all of this economic pressure on North Korea. Now, if it was treated as just more than, crude bombast, in some senses, it really worked when the president tweeted that out. Because on Friday, the U.S. delivered the proposal to the UN Security Council. On Saturday, Trump got the 15-0 victory, including Russia and including China. And it's no secret how Trump did it. Now, to show our potential foes that he means business, well, he threatened or actually imposed sanctions on a number of countries, which I thought was, very smart. Anyway, 800-941-SEAN is our number. I want to play Bill Clinton from back in, what year was this, Lauren? I forget. What's that, 2004? No, I was going to say, what? 1994. Okay. By the way, when you talk, you got to talk on the air like Linda does, or else I don't know if it's in my ear or it's on the air because it sounds the same in my ear.
Yes, boss.
Yes, boss.
Be nice.
All right, stop.
Stop
really?
being mean.
All right, so here is Bill Clinton. It's a good deal for America. Good deal for America.
Before I take your questions, I'd like to say just a word about the framework with North Korea that Ambassador Gallucci signed this morning. This is a good deal for the United States. North Korea will freeze and then dismantle its nuclear program. South Korea and our other allies will be better protected. The entire world will be safer as we slow the spread of nuclear weapons. South Korea, with support from Japan and other nations, will bear most of the cost of providing North Korea with fuel to make up for the nuclear energy it is losing. And they will pay for an alternative power system for North Korea that will allow them to produce electricity while making it much harder for them to produce nuclear weapons. The United States and international inspectors will carefully monitor North Korea to make sure it keeps its commitments. Only as it does so will North Korea fully join the community of nations.
Only then. And it's going to prevent them from getting nuclear weapons. And we paid a fortune, a total and complete fortune, to get that deal. By the way, does it all sound familiar? Because it should, because that's exactly what Obama did with billions of dollars, plane loads of cash and other currency that were handed over to the mullahs in Iran as part of the please, pretty please, let's have peace in our time, please, don't build nuclear weapons. And that's going to work out about as well as what happened with Neville Chamberlain and Bill Clinton, in the sense that you cannot appease evil radicals, dictators, and despots that don't care about truth, and shaking hands, signing agreements, and literally stealing money and making false promises is just par for the course. Remember, in the lead up to World War II, there were people like Winston Churchill warning about the insanity, the evil that lurked in Adolf Hitler. And then there was the great meeting with Neville Chamberlain. Well, we have peace in our time. Yeah, that lasted long. Well, the same thing Bill Clinton believed the North Koreans. He thought he made a deal. He thought they'd never develop nuclear weapons. It cost taxpayers billions and billions, and it didn't work out. It's the same thinking that went into the Iranian deal with the mullahs in Iran that have promised to destroy America and have promised to destroy Israel, and burning American flags, burning Israeli flags, 25 days notice before inspections. They're not even American inspectors, and we don't even know if we have all the sites down. You know, at times we could be really dumb and naive and really stupid. And now we find ourselves, this is now the consequences of stupidity here. Because if you watch the Washington Post, for example, North Korea is now making missile-ready nuclear weapons, according to U.S. analysts. And the Washington Post reporting that North Korea can now mount a nuclear warhead on an ICBM. And remember the news that we've had in just the last week, that they're also building the capability that they can fire these nuclear weapons out of a submarine. Okay, we better take really close track of the submarines. And then on top of that, we know that they can also fire nuclear weapons that can literally reach the continental United States. We better help our THAAD anti-ballistic missile technologies working. All the tests have so far been really good. But I shudder to think that that's what we're counting on. I've always predicted that Ronald Reagan's, quote, Star Wars that he was mocked for, or strategic defense, is going to end up being his greatest legacy. But now we know that, according to the Washington Post, North Korea has now crossed that final technological threshold. And that is they're now able to hit the United States. And a report last week that they can hit New York City. That's right, with an intercontinental ballistic missile, with a nuclear warhead. And that they can hit Boston, Mass. with a nuclear warhead. Now, if that's all true, you now are beholden to a madman named Kim Jong-un, like his father, Kim Jong-il, would now have the ability, if we don't stop it, to incinerate New York City with the push of a button. This is not a game here, and there's no good options here. What are the options? Unless there's somebody that is deep inside North Korea, which is very difficult to penetrate, that could take this guy out. There's no option there, nor do you know who's going to take his place if you did take him out. Okay, option number two. Let's say even the world aligns, China, Russia, the United States, Israel, our Western European allies, Great Britain and others. And we all align and we all take out the nuclear sites. Okay, that doesn't mean he couldn't put one of these nuclear weapons on a Scud missile and fire it into South Korea and Seoul, and God knows how many thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people will be dead. And on top of that, if you have to take out their nuclear sites, you're going to incinerate. It'll be gone. It'll be obliterated, North Korea. And then on top of that, does this madman fire at Japan? Is he stupid enough to fire at China? Who knows what this guy's capable of? He doesn't seem to be governed by the rules of mutually assured destruction. For as evil as the former Soviet Union was, they understood they were going to die. And that prevented war. You know, and can Donald Trump even make phone calls now with all the deep state leaks, leaking conversations with presidents and prime ministers? How does he have a private conversation when the deep state is now monitoring and leaking the conversations? How does he have a real discussion with a world leader over this? But this new analysis completed last month by the Defense Intelligence Agency comes on the heels of another intelligence assessment that really raises the official estimate for the total number of bombs in North Korea and their atomic arsenal. And they calculated last month that up to 60 nuclear weapons are now controlled by Kim Jong-un. And some independent experts believe the number of bombs is smaller. Okay, he only has 30. Say cut it in half. But it's got to deepen the world's concern about an evolving North Korean military threat that appears to be advancing far more rapidly in spite of all the bribes and assurances they'd never get nuclear weapons. Now, maybe it's years before the country's weapons scientists design the compact warhead, but it's coming. If it's not here, if the Washington Post is not exactly right, if our intelligence is not exactly right, the problem with the intelligence community is very hard to grab intelligence out of North Korea. That they produce nuclear weapons for ballistic missile delivery to include ICBM-class missiles. Well, that hits New York City and the continental United States. And this guy has now become increasingly confident in the reliability of not only the nuclear arsenal, but of the ability to deliver that arsenal. And that's why we saw what happened on Saturday. The president has promised and vowed that North Korea will never be allowed to threaten the United States with nuclear weapons. H.R. McMaster actually said the prospect of a nuclear-armed North Korea with nuclear-tipped ICBMs would be intolerable from the president's perspective. We have we have to provide all options, and that includes the military option. But I'm just warning you, that military option, there's no good option. And we have the best military on the face of the earth. All right, we'll continue. It's just everything else now goes into perspective as far as I'm concerned. The world better be on alert. And if you don't think evil exists, look at the last 100 years of human history and 100 million human souls destroyed by human evil and governments and wars. This isn't a game. This could be the defining moment in all of our lives coming up here. Donald Trump of North Korea makes more threats. They will be met with fire, fury, and power. There's no other option. But now imagine if you're South Korea. Imagine if you're Japan. China better be paying very close attention. And they've allowed this problem to grow out of control by not confronting Kim Jong-un up to this point. And now they're very close in terms of proximity. What if this guy is like a suicide bomber in this sense? What if he's a leader that doesn't care about mutually assured destruction? What if he just wants to go down with the ship? There are people that have that mindset. I'm not saying he does, but what if he does? You have to assume the worst. If you don't, and so if you can't take him out internally because nobody can get in there internally, what are your options here? Okay, analyze this. So let's say we can build a world coalition. Let's say the 15-0 vote is an indication of a world coalition of some of the biggest, best armies in the world, coupling with the lone superpower, the United States. Then we could bring Israel in. Then we can bring in, let's say the communist Chinese want to come in. Let's say even Russia wants to come in. Let's say Great Britain comes in and all of our Western European allies. And let's say we come up with the biggest, best, hardest hitting campaign to take out every single nuclear site of North Korea. Okay, all right, let's assume we do that. Now, for a second, let's assume we're successful. We take out all of those nuclear sites, the biggest military operation in the history of the world. Okay, What if those bombs burst? Now you will have in your lifetime the obliteration. I mean, obliterating an entire country. And I don't check, Lauren, what the population in North Korea, South Korea is. Then you have nuclear fallout issues from that. And let's say that he's able to launch in the interim as the attack is coming in. He's prepared to launch on South Korea, Japan in the interim, and we can't stop it, even with our THAAD anti-ballistic missile system. Well, then how many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands can die there? And the nuclear fallout from that. And then you can't not factor in that, well, he can hit China a lot more easily than the continental United States. No good option here. That's what happens. You appease dictators.
Before I take your questions, I'd like to say just a word about the framework with North Korea that Ambassador Gallucci signed this morning. This is a good deal for the United States. North Korea will freeze and then dismantle its nuclear program. South Korea and our other allies will be better protected. The entire world will be safer as we slow the spread of nuclear weapons. South Korea, with support from Japan and other nations, will bear most of the cost of providing North Korea with fuel to make up for the nuclear energy it is losing. And they will pay for an alternative power system for North Korea that will allow them to produce electricity while making it much harder for them to produce nuclear weapons. The United States and international inspectors will carefully monitor North Korea to make sure it keeps its commitments. Only as it does so will North Korea fully join the community of nations.
Over a year ago, we took the first step towards today's framework with a deal to stop the progress of Iran's nuclear program and roll it back in key areas. And recall that at the time, skeptics argued that Iran would cheat and that we could not verify their compliance and the interim agreement would fail. Instead, it has succeeded exactly as intended. Iran has met all of its obligations. It eliminated its stockpile of dangerous nuclear material. Inspections of Iran's program increased, and we continued negotiations to see if we could achieve a more comprehensive deal. Today, after many months of tough, principled diplomacy, we have achieved the framework for that deal. And it is a good deal, a deal that meets our core objectives. This framework would cut off every pathway that Iran could take to develop a nuclear weapon. Iran will face strict limitations on its program, and Iran has also agreed to the most robust and intrusive inspections and transparency regime ever negotiated for any nuclear program in history. So this deal is not based on trust. It's based on unprecedented verification.
Not really, because you get 25 days notice of inspections. Enough time to probably clean up the mess. Well, the radioactive material will linger around so we can pick it up. They'll purposely put in there something that will give some fake, phony rationale for the radioactive activity picked up. You know, I don't think most people really understand the threat of all of this and the proliferation of nuclear weapons, but you know, North Korea is now on the path to becoming a full-fledged nuclear power, and as I keep saying, there's no good option. Do you know in big cities all across the world, and I'm assuming that a lot of you don't know that, but my years around law enforcement, intelligence people, FBI friends of mine, and just all these people they've shared, especially in the last number of years, about leaking and intel and unmasking and surveillance. And I've learned so much, and I just want to share it all with you, which is why we keep putting all these experts on, because it's, number one, I'm fascinated by it all, and there's very little in life that keeps me up at night. I'm not a person that is ever consumed with fear. I'm not a worrier. I don't sit on my hands. And I have enough faith that, okay, what's meant to be is meant to be, and I'm willing to go down with the ship for the things that I deeply believe in, and that's it. It really is that simple. And I'm a fighter, and I fight back, and if I win, I win. If I lose, then I'll shake hands and say goodbye. That's how I live my life. I have very deeply held core beliefs that guide me. So, but it's one of the things that keeps me up at night. And big cities all across the world, you probably don't know, are monitoring every square inch to see if they pick up any radioactive activity. There are people that I know in New York City where the monitors, they just get out of some type of procedure. Maybe they were getting radiation to deal with their cancer treatment. Maybe a thallium stress test. I know somebody that's had a thallium stress test where they kind of shoot thallium. I've had these tests a number of times to make sure I don't have a heart attack. And although people warn me all, Hannity, you keep getting worked up, you're going to have a heart attack. Oh, according to my doctor, I'm not. And it's a great test. But you have these tests, and then you walk around, you're radioactive. And then the detectors pick up on it. Beep, 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 beep. And all of a sudden, a couple of cops come up, and, you know, if they see it's an older gentleman or woman, they're probably not going to confront them. But if you're a younger person and you have a backpack, they might, thinking you have a dirty bomb because of the amount of damage that can be done. I mean, human beings, and this gets to my whole focus of deliver us from evil. What we're now facing with North Korea, and if we're not smart, what we'll face down the road with Iran is when it's A squared, B squared, C squared. If you take radicalism, take the mullahs in Iran for a second, that want to annihilate and have repeatedly threatened to wipe Israel off the map, repeatedly threatened the United States of America, and burning our flags, death to America, the great Satan, the little Satan, on and on and on. And you couple it with a belief system, as they have, that this is the will of their God to destroy innocent men, women, and children. And it's taken to such an extreme point that some of these people will actually strap bombs on their own kids and send them off into, public places for maximum amount of damage and let them kill innocent men, women, and children. Okay, telling them that their God, Allah, awaits them in heaven and that they're going to be rewarded with 72 virgins. For the average person, you just can't comprehend that evil. It's... let me see if I can explain it better. I don't know why. I guess because I'm a loser. I mean, there's the answer. That's going to be the headline somewhere, someplace. That Hannity admits it. Finally, it'll be on Mediaite. Hannity admits he really is a loser.
Breaking news.
Really, now. You guys, in the middle of a serious discussion, you guys have to distract me. But what I mean by that is, I spent a lot of time watching the History Channel. I watched the American Heroes Channel. There's the old saying that if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. And if you just watch, just observe, they got all these series because there is a lot of footage that over the years has come off. Hitler in his final days, Hitler's rise, Hitler's fall, Hitler's this, Allied forces this. And you just learn so much that there was every indication that this was the rise of evil in Germany at the time. And then you could see this. It's very interesting to watch mass hypnosis. And how is it that good people, otherwise good people, can be so indoctrinated, they can so compartmentalize any form of goodness and conscience and right and wrong within them, that their job, and I described this scene in my book where it was the job of these murdering Nazis. All these people would be put on trains. They'd be brought to the concentration camps. And the first thing that those that were doing the deeds of Hitler would do. Okay, now, is there anybody here that's a carpenter? Oh, would you mind? Oh, good. We need carpenters. Anybody here that's a nurse? Oh, great. Would you please step forward? Anyone here that is involved in, I don't know, steel work or whatever? Anyone here that can do plumbing? Whatever it was. And these people, what they were doing is they were trying to prevent fear, panic, and chaos. And those people would step forward. And those people were given hope, false hope. And then their clothes were taken off. They're told they're going into a shower, and they were all slaughtered. How does one human being do that to another human being? How do you do that? What, do you go home and eat dinner with your own kids? How do you do that? That's evil. Mass hypnosis, indoctrination. How do you explain the killing fields in Cambodia? How do you explain Boko Haram? How do you explain Stalin's Russia? How do you explain man's inhumanity to man on a micro level? Rape, incest, hurting children. How do you explain murder, rage, whatever, hurting old people? There's a lot of evil. I tried to explain that I think for most good people, they have a hard time comprehending, wrapping their minds, their good minds, around the fact that evil exists. And I think world leaders also similarly put their heads in the sand. A classic example is Churchill and Chamberlain. Another example, I think Bill Clinton really believed he made a good deal with North Korea. I don't think it was nefarious. I don't think he thought this day would come. I believe he wanted to believe they could be good. And good people have, same with Obama and Iran. And I'm telling you that there's not all good in this world. Yet there is evil. And evil needs to be defeated. And if your mindset, your rationale, your thought process drives you to strap bombs on your own kids and tell them you're going to heaven, that's evil in our time. So the challenges here are unbelievable. Here's another, just to add to our collective paranoia today and genuine concern. I don't worry, you get concerned. But just last month, North Korea was caught surveilling one of our ground-based missile defense sites. Reuters, a suspected North Korean drone, had taken photographs of an advanced U.S. anti-missile battery in South Korea before it crashed while apparently on its way back home. That was reported by the South Korean military. A drone mounted with a camera was found last week in a forest near the border with North Korea, similar in size, shape to a North Korean drone that was found back in 2014 on an island near the border. We confirmed that it took about 10 photos of the anti-missile system known as the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense. That's a THAAD missile system that we've been successfully now testing, according to South Korean Defense Ministry. The drone was suspected of obviously being from North Korea. South Korea is deploying the U.S. anti-missile defense system, literally from about 155 miles from the border with North Korea to counter this growing missile threat from North Korea. All right, let me get to some other news here, and then we'll check in the next hour. Jay Sekulow will weigh in on that, on the varying scandals, and what do you do about Rosenstein and everything else. But, it's, and by the way, during the Obama years, it's been 34 years since President Reagan unveiled strategic defense, and he was mocked and he was ridiculed. Star Wars. We may end up saving hundreds of thousands or millions of lives at some point. But Star Wars. I've said it since that time that it may be his greatest achievement through the prism of history. The Obama administration, by the way, canceled some of their most important missile defense programs, started withdrawing the U.S. and their anti-ballistic missile treaty in 2002. When Obama's missile defense policy shift cost the nation precious time and capabilities at a time where you can see the emergence of more and more new enemies. So what is the strategic plan on all of this? Anyway, Harry Kazianis is with us, Director of Defense Studies at the Center for National Interest. He joins the show today, along with Jonathan Gillum, host of The Experts, former Navy SEAL, FBI agent, Federal Air Marshal. Harry, let's start with you and ask you, I don't see a lot of good options here, and the best option would be if somebody was already some type of spy in a position to take him out. I assume that would have happened by now. 2, then you have even a best-case scenario, a coalition of the willing, including even China, Russia, let's say our Western European allies, Israel, and you take out the nuclear sites. Number one, it would incinerate the entire country of North Korea, may impact South Korea, depending on the winds, and you risk nuclear fallout. And on top of that, then you risk, if you don't do it fast enough, this lunatic that could get so angry at Donald Trump's words, he may start a nuclear war. That same guy would launch into South Korea, Guam, Japan, or even China. What do we do?
Sean, well, it's good to be with you. Two things I'd offer right off the bat. The first thing that we have to do above all else, Sean, is I'm so tired here sitting in Washington, D.C., 2 blocks from the White House, and people still have the gall to say that we still have more time, that North Korea doesn't have nuclear weapons, or they can't hit the United States. The fact of the matter is, Sean, that Washington Post article yesterday was devastating, and it shows that the North Koreans have the technological capabilities to hit the United States. They might be missing a couple technical components here or there, but we have to assume from here on in they have that capability. Because if we don't, every couple of days people are just going to keep saying we can kick the can down the road a little bit longer, and this situation's going to get worse. So that's the first thing. Second thing I'd offer is, look, we don't have a lot of great options as you laid out. Any of those options, we're talking about millions of people dead, and I don't think anybody wants that to happen. But our best option right now is a very simple one. China has signed on to 8 United Nations Security Council resolutions, including one last weekend. It is time for Beijing to actually step up and prove that it is not an international pariah and actually enforce the sanctions. Because if they did that, that would take the billions of dollars away from Kim Jong-un to develop the next generation of nuclear weapons, which is a hydrogen bomb and a 3-stage ICBM that could actually hit all of the United States. Now, those aren't perfect options, but that at least sets the stage for the president to act boldly and swiftly to at least contain this problem.
What do you think, Jonathan Gillum? Do you agree that millions can die here? That's my greatest fear.
No, I mean, it's obvious that millions could die, especially in Seoul, Korea, where there's 27 million people 30 miles from the border with North Korea. There's no doubt that this is something, Sean, it's not a problem that's just risen, immediately. This is something that's been going for over 50 years. That many predecessors. Yeah,
but the problem, Trump, Jonathan, I don't mean to interrupt you, but when Trump came in office, he was told by Obama, according to reports, that he was 4 or 5 years away from this problem, and now it's upon us, within 8 months of his presidency.
Well, it's been one failure after another with these different individuals in the seat of the president. I mean, John McCain sitting there criticizing the president, but John McCain, this problem's been going on and slowly escalating.
Isn't this the same John McCain that chanted bomb, 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 bomb Iran? Isn't that the same guy?
Same guy, and, he just is taking swipes at the president. And, I think, Sean, here's the thing. Along with what your other guests were just saying there about the sanctions and getting
He has China a name,
involved.
Jonathan. You don't have to be so rude. His name is Harry. You could say Harry. Not that hard to remember. Forget his last name. Nobody can say it.
No, nobody can.
But going on with Harry's comments there about the sanctions and getting China involved, I absolutely agree with that. I do think, though, that we need to consider a tactical option as well. And one thing I would definitely look at is, especially in the case of Seoul, Korea, who has politicians there that have thrown curveballs as well with defensive measures to stop missiles. But I would definitely look at the type of armament that they have where they could immediately start lobbing munitions over into Seoul, Korea, and I would completely demolish that portion of from the border over to eliminate.
Do you agree with me that the only way to really stop them? I guess we can live with mutually assured destruction. I guess that's an option. And we certainly, Newt Gingrich was pointing out that a space-based missile defense program that gave you a redundancy of 20 or 30 or 40 shots at taking that sucker out is key. I'm a big believer in missile defense. Our THAAD anti-ballistic missile system works well, but if you miss the shot, you miss the second shot. Sounds like, we could potentially get hit in New York or Boston. That's not enough redundancy for my safety and security and peace of mind.
Ultimately, if you took the head off of the snake, that would probably cause the most destruction that you possibly could if you actually assassinated Kim Jong-un. And although he has
but the thing is, it's almost impossible to get into that country. Now, I would assume that maybe the Mossad has somebody in there. I mean, I trust the Israelis more than anybody when it comes to this type of warfare because of the conditions that they live under. But North Korea has not exactly been their focus and their main threat.
Right. When it comes to warfare, Sean, one thing we've definitely proven over since World War II, is that if you don't fully think through the tactical options that you have and be prepared to make the first move, chances are you're either going to lose or you're going to create a vacuum somewhere. So we need to consider these options. I will tell you, having Mattis back the president is spectacular because that sent a message of strength that even John McCain can't bolster, can't stop.
What is your reaction to that, and how quickly do you think we could put together a missile defense system with the redundancy that Newt Gingrich was talking about, Harry?
Well, Sean, I think it would take a number of years. It would probably cost hundreds of billions of dollars. And frankly, look, that's a lot of money, but it's something we should have done starting back in the 1980s, under Ronald Reagan. But as Reagan left office and it went to George W. Bush 1 and then to Bill Clinton, the memory of the Soviet menace started fading away, and we went to this whole unipolar moment where we thought we were basically omnipotent, and we forgot about these threats. We're basically having to relearn history all over again, and that's really the challenge. Now, I just want to jump back over to John's point talking about some of these tactical options, because he's spot on. We have to think about what happens if we're in some sort of, day one military confrontation. But I want to offer another point that I think is very important here, and it gets lost in the mix of all this. We need to keep in mind our experience in Iraq and Afghanistan. Because keep in mind, the United States is very good, Sean, at winning wars. We have the most powerful military on the planet. We have B-2 stealth bombers. We have nuclear weapons. We have all this great stuff. We can win the war. But what happens after the war? Keep this in mind. It would cost trillions of dollars to rebuild North Korea. And we're not even just talking about the financials here.
Think about trying to do it. It's their region of the world. Why do we have to always get involved? Because
I'm not talking about putting up the money. Oh, no. I'm not even going there. But just think about how that would have to be reorganized. South Korea's got a lot of money to do that, so I'm not so concerned about that. But think about as well about if that went nuclear and all the amount of radioactive fallout that would be all through Asia. You're talking about millions of more people dying. And then thinking about just trying to reintegrate the North Korean society with South Korea. How would the Chinese respond if you have a united Korea? Because I will tell you, Sean, I've talked to Chinese officials. That is their greatest fear. So the danger of all this is we're opening the ultimate Pandora's box. And
all right, I got to put you on hold here. Stay with the Pandora box issue. We got to take a break. We'll come back. We'll continue. And also we'll get to your calls coming up as well in the next hour. I promise. 800-941-SEAN. All right, as we continue with Harry, Kazianis is with us and also Jonathan Gillum. And we left off at a point, Harry. I want to get you a chance to talk about that. And we'll talk about options, Pandora's box, and what do we open up here with North Korea?
Sure. I mean, basically the point is this. This is why every administration going back from really like the 1950s till the end of the Korean War until the present day always made the North Korean issue the fourth, fifth, or sixth biggest problem because it's so hard to actually wrap your head around. And I have to give the president a lot of credit to make this his number one foreign policy challenge. That takes guts, to be honest with you, because walking into it, there is no easy solutions. So no matter what part of the aisle you're on, you have to give him credit for that.
Well, you do agree with that, Jonathan Gillum?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, I've agreed with everything that Harry said so far, with the exception of one thing. America, as we know it, is great at fighting wars, but we are not good at winning wars because in order to win the war, we have to complete the fight. And for the first time in a long time, this president and his Secretary of Defense
It doesn't sound like this is going to be a long war, though. It sounds like it's going to be over. It sounds like the type of weapons America will have to use, but considering the weaponry that Kim Jong-un has and North Korea has, that this has to be a war that ends quickly. There doesn't seem to be an option.
And that's correct. But the first thing you have to do in these cases is name the enemy and set the parameters for the reality of what we're actually looking at. That's what this president's done. I have not seen this from a president since Reagan.
Well, I haven't either, but I mean, I guess the fear that I have, the greatest fear that I have, and there was somebody on TV, I guess last night or this morning, I don't even remember because I was just half asleep, saying that, oh, this isn't going to happen. Oh, you guys are overreacting. And I'm like, really? I don't think so. What's so funny about a madman having nuclear weapons, Harry? And then Dianne Feinstein, this is bombastic rhetoric of the president, fire, fury like the world has never seen before, and this will further isolate Kim Jong-un. It's like McCain suggesting that Donald Trump's words will set him over the edge, will tip him over the tipping point. And I'm like, if you're that close to insanity, you're already there.
The challenge with this is something that I've encountered here in Washington is that people continually try to put their viewpoint onto Donald Trump. Now, look, let's be honest. Donald Trump is a very different type of president than we've had in a long time. He was never a governor. He was never a senator. He was never a vice president. He was never elected to office. The way he speaks to the American people, and quite frankly to the world, is very different than everybody else. So if we're going to apply this presidential logic and maybe apply to how Barack Obama spoke to the world or the American people, it's completely different. I take the president's comments yesterday about fire and power and all this stuff. It's very clear what he said. You don't need a PhD from Princeton to figure it out. He's telling Kim Jong-un, look, if you fire a nuclear weapon at the United States or one of our allies or Guam or whatever, you're signing your own death warrant. Now, I was able to figure that out pretty easily. My wife, who is not an international relations expert, was able to figure that out pretty easily. But, of course, the media has to blow it up and make a big controversy over it. That does not serve anybody. If you don't like the president, that's fine. That's your right as an American to do that. But
all right, Harry, welcome to the program. Great job. And, Jonathan, you were just okay. You could have been nicer to our guests, but we really appreciate you being with us. I mean, you even guest host here. Maybe I'll have to let Harry fill in because I thought you'd be nicer to our fellow guests.
Oh, Sean, you're in trouble, let me tell you.
I'm from Southern, so it's hard for me to pronounce.
Yeah, that's all right. Jonathan Gillum knows I can give him a run for his money in spite of, I got to show you some tapes I got from today using blade and firearm training day today. You're going to like it. 800-941-SEAN, toll-free telephone number. We'll have some fun, the Gabi one. With all this talk of nuclear war, I just need a 5-minute break and a smile. That's next. All right, 24 now till the top of the hour. The president speaking out about North Korea, and so he's incendiary. His words may start something horrible. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, really, guys? We tried to bribe the guy. Bill Clinton assured us this is a good deal for the American people. They're never, ever going to get nuclear weapons. And lo and behold, we're here today, just like I'm telling you, we're going to be here tomorrow, somewhere down the line with Iran and that horrible Obama deal, $150 billion to mullahs. But, of course, they get 25 days inspections notice, not by Americans either, and they get to continue to spin their centrifuges, just like North Korea was able to keep the nuclear rods that are needed and necessary to make nuclear weapons. And, by the way, Hillary gave 20% of our plutonium to Putin and Russia, but that's not a conspiracy in any way. As we've been talking about in the last few days, I've been telling everybody and asking generals and people in the know, is there any good answer here? And many people that I know, love, and respect, and people that have been in warfare and studied warfare their entire lives all say there really isn't any good answer. I mean, even under a best-case scenario, if Kim Jong-un is dedicating himself to creating mass destruction and continues to saber rattle and continues to build his ICBMs, and the world can't face such a threat, and if the world has to act, then we find ourselves in the difficult, precarious position of having to act, even if China joins us. Now, China has said, North Korea, you are on your own if you strike first. They've also saying to the United States, urging us not to do it either. But if, in fact, something happens or we feel that this guy is too unbalanced to have missile technology, ICBM capability, married to nuclear weapons, especially weapons with a range that could reach New York City or Boston, and we feel that we have to act, and China joins us, and Israel joins us, and even Russia joins us, and Western European allies join us, okay, what are we going to do? Okay, you're going to incinerate North Korea. Does he launch weapons at Guam, South Korea, Seoul, China, and Japan before our weapons actually even get there? Does he have any pre-strike plan in place if he senses he's under attack? And what is the nuclear fallout? Now, there's another scenario as well. The former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, was talking on TV the other night that, okay, if 3 nuclear weapons, if in fact they ever exploded just above the United States, in the atmosphere of the United States, well, the U.S., Canada, would be vulnerable to a catastrophic attack. In other words, there is the possibility, an electromagnetic pulse. And I just, out of sheer interest over the years, and they've been the subject of spy novels and doomsday novels, etc., but just launched from the atmosphere, an electromagnetic pulse would literally shut down the electric grid in this country, dismantle every appliance, water systems, food distribution, and much more, but not just for hours, not just for days, but for weeks, months, and the possibility even longer. Anyway, a person that has caught my interest, he works with the Toronto Sun. He's a columnist. Anthony Furies is with us, and he actually wrote the book about Pulse Attack, the real story behind the secret weapon that can destroy North America. How are you?
Hey, Sean, I'm great. Great to be back on the program.
Do you come under fire for writing and talking about these things, or do people find it as interesting as I do?
Well, I get under a little bit of fire because you're right to when you tee it up saying people have written spy novels and it's in a couple movies like a James Bond and an Ocean's 11. So people think it's science fiction. They think it's entirely relegated to the tinfoil hat brigade. And I got to be honest, I sort of kind of did when I first started researching this, Sean. And then I found out why I thought that way.
By the way, so did I. I thought it was nut talk, totally, completely off the rails when I first heard about it.
Well, and the reason that's the case is because it's been classified information, so all the serious people haven't been able to talk about it. What happened is back in the 60s, both the U.S. and Russia were doing their atmospheric tests, and they were doing them atmospherically, not because they wanted to do them in the atmosphere, because you can't detonate them on the ground. You're going to create a big crater. But when they did this, they launched them up in the sky, and then they realized 500 kilometers away, various sort of street lamps and so forth went out and short-circuited. And they thought, hang on a second. And they sent technicians to have a look, and they thought, uh-oh, there's a connection here. And they realized you detonate one of these up in the atmosphere, sends a big high-energy waveform around that can fry pretty much all electronics. JFK brings in the Partial Test Ban Treaty in the early 60s, which I think we can agree is pretty much a good thing. The downside is it halted you being able to do that, learn more primary source information. So that's what shut it all down, Sean, and that's why when it gets classified and when you can't do more tests, it's not really, a sexy thing to do your PhD and you can't get any funding to, pay your mortgage on and so forth. So kind of a cone of silence goes around it.
So this was something that the former Soviet Union and the United States were testing and maybe still kind of behind the scenes are working on that we just don't know about?
Well, yeah, exactly. In my book, Pulse Attack, I talk about how Kazakhstan actually had one detonated against them. When they were part of the USSR, Russia thought, well, we'll do a test over Kazakhstan, see what happens. They got rid of all the electronics there. They fried so many of them. They even took out part of the power grid. So when there are these rogue state actors, Iran, North Korea, they're looking around, they're going, wow, this is kind of great asymmetrical warfare here. The basic idea that we could maybe, just us, little North Korea, Kim Jong-un, we could take out all of the eastern seaboard in the U.S. and Canada and so forth. That's an amazing power to have.
Yeah, well, I think so. All right, so describe the threat that might exist for the U.S. In other words, and is it a possibility? In other words, Newt Gingrich was talking about he wants a strategic defense initiative that has the redundancy of, let's say, the North Koreans, God forbid, they launch an ICBM with nuclear weapons. It's headed towards the United States, the continental United States. He wants a redundancy factor that we have 10, 20, 30, even 40 shots from space at this weapon to take it out. In other words, you have the THAAD anti-missile defense system now. You've got the Israeli system that's on the ground. It's done a really good job for them in keeping the Israelis safe, but it's probably got to be a lot more advanced. If you go to a space-based defense system and, let's say, a laser type of system that could explode it in the atmosphere, depending at what point in its trip that it got shot down, what would happen or what could happen?
Well, if they succeed in the detonation, you can shoot it down at various levels and it won't actually happen. And I should add that they could detonate this from a satellite. North Korea has a KSM satellite that flies over the middle of the U.S. pretty much every 12 hours. We don't know what's in that thing. I'm sure there's not a nuclear weapon, right now, but there were many things. Sean, 6 months ago, people would have told you and me, there's no way North Korea will get ICBM. Now they have them. If they do successfully do this detonation, it very well could take out all of the electricity grid. And that doesn't just mean our iPhones and our fancy gadgets. It means my son, born premature a couple of years ago on a life support machine. Uh-oh, that's going off. Grandma's dialysis machine. Wait a second, go past a few days there. We're talking weeks. The water filtration systems aren't working. Well, we all need water. We can't get clean stuff up. Even the sump pumps in the country, you can't get those going. The regional food terminals, how much food do we actually have stored to feed our cities? Uh-oh, all those things start to spoil. And you start to realize why this can end up looking like, The Walking Dead minus the zombies.
All right, but you've got to admit it's fairly remote, right? I mean, you have, for example, do you ever read any of these magazine pieces or stories about, quote, preppers? I mean, they're always being portrayed as the nuttiest people around. And, I have extra water at my house. I have some extra food at my house, the prepared food like the astronauts eat. I have a big generator at my house. I've taken some preparations, but not for the long term like this.
Well, first of all, to the people who say the odds of it are happening are pretty low, NASA says the odds of a naturally occurring EMP attack happening, a solar flare, is around about 10% per decade. 10% per decade. Okay, well, those aren't very high odds. Well, hold on a second. There are folks buying tickets for the Powerball.
When did NASA say this? I never heard that.
Yeah, they have way less of a choice of winning the lottery, chance of winning the lottery. We take out insurance on our home, even though we know a fire most likely isn't going to happen. But the odd thing about all of this, Sean, is the mitigation strategy for it is really quite simple. There's been a number of statewide initiatives and even a couple federal initiatives that want to bring in legislation and regulation on this. And it's really a two-step thing. One, let's learn a bit more, because right now, of course, the worst-case scenario is popular because nobody's done any recent research or investigation to really exactly authoritatively tell how bad this thing will be if it will hit. And two, as you're redoing these parts in your various electrical grid systems, put in a regulation that just says as you're replacing those costs over the years, over their life cycle, replace them with EMP-compliant parts. And this is not a tinfoil hat thing, Sean. There are major engineering firms out there which have patents for these types of products. So mitigation is available and surprisingly quite simple.
All right, when we come back, I just want to ask you, based on your knowledge or experience, your study of what an EMP attack is, and people, I bet you some people are hearing this probably for the first time, and they're probably thinking, is this guy real? Can this really happen? And what they should do or what you'd recommend they do. I mean, I want you to send me that NASA report. I'd really like to read that. This is just one of those topics that I read like at 3 a.m. when I can't sleep because I didn't have my pillow. But it's something that I just find a real interest in because it's kind of scary and it's like a novel, but yet it's got some truth and it's rooted in a reality in many, many ways, especially as we become so electronically dependent, and especially power grid issues, which is a very scary scenario, and of course water filtration issues and stuff like that. Stay right there. We'll take a break. We'll come back and we will continue with Anthony Furi's wrote the book Pulse Attack, the real story behind the secret weapon that can destroy North America.
The final hour of the Sean Hannity Show is up next. Hang on for Sean's Conservative Solutions.
All right, as we continue with Anthony Furi's, with a Toronto Sun columnist, wrote the book Pulse Attack, the real story behind the secret weapon that can destroy North America. And a lot of people haven't even heard about electromagnetic pulse and what it could do. And you mentioned that Russia performed an attack in the past. Where did they do it?
They did it over Kazakhstan when they were then part of the USSR. So, Sean, they were looking at basically testing this out. They weren't really being nefarious about it, trying to blow Kazakhstan to smithereens or anything, but they thought, we'll do a test, we'll do it over this area. And they did it, and they took down a lot of the grid in Kazakhstan. We're talking millions of people who lost power. Part of their power plants actually went down because of it. That was back in the 60s when they hardly knew anything about this technology. So you think if a country like North Korea also wants to just sort of lightly poke around in the same way Russia was doing it, they may have some success.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a pretty scary thing. You say North Korea may already have this capability to perform this type of attack. Why?
Well, basically, it's about how high up you can get the missile. It's a really low kiloton yield that's needed. When you look at the actual arsenal North Korea has right now, the size of their nukes are nothing compared to some of the bigger ones that Russia and the U.S. have in their stockpile. But you really only need the smallest of nuclear detonations to trigger this sort of gamma ray reaction in the atmosphere that sends out this electromagnetic waveform. So the simple fact that they have the nuclear capability, the question is just whether or not they want to detonate it atmospherically or not, or whether they're planning for some sort of ground launch.
You talk about the North America, you talk about Canada, the U.S., et cetera, being vulnerable to this. Is there any work being done to protect the grid, to protect the water, to protect America if such an incident ever occurred?
There are just a handful of politicians in the U.S. advocating for that. As you said earlier, Newt Gingrich is talking about this issue. Yes and no. Sadly, in Canada, there's even much less going on. I've been talking in our parliament buildings to the legislators about it, giving speeches there. And as you know, we're not east-west, Canada and the U.S. when it comes to electricity. We're north-south. There's practically no borders when it comes to the energy industry in North America. So you're looking at the eastern seaboard going out, the western seaboard. There is not much of a mitigation strategy. The only good news I have to tell you, Sean, is that a few years ago, money was released by the White House to harden Cheyenne Mountain, the NORAD facilities where Canada and the U.S. work together to monitor the sky. So they want to protect the military assets And the military talks about it. I mean, it's no conspiracy theory to the military. They take it quite seriously. The only problem is, great, so we get an EMP attack. Military assets are still there, which I guess means they can stop us from being nuked on the ground. But civil society still goes out. People are still without water for weeks or months. So we still got to get civil society on board. And Sean, you know just as much as anyone, politics is downstream from culture, and people just aren't talking about this right now. So they got to get a cultural movement for this.
Yeah, well said. Look, I really appreciate all you're doing. And if people want to get the book, I guess it's on Amazon and in bookstores. And
it's at Amazon. It's at pulseattackbook.com as well.
Yeah, you're not scaring the crap out of people, are you? You're not scaring the living crap out of people. That's the secret behind the weapon that can totally destroy North America. Don't worry, everybody. It's fine. Everything's fine. All right. We really appreciate it. Anthony, thank you. All right, that's going to wrap things up for today, for this week. And Let Not Your Heart Be Troubled will be back on Monday. You know, I don't think this news cycle is ever going to slow down. It just is insane. We'll be watching very closely, monitoring very closely all of the events coming out of North Korea. We'll be monitoring very closely whether or not Republicans can get their act together. We'll have a lot more on all of these issues on Monday. I assume the president will make news this weekend, considering he's not on vacation. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here Monday, and hope you get some rest. All right, appreciate it. 800-941-SEAN is our number if you want to be a part of the program. We're going to have all of this tonight on Hannity, 10 Eastern. We got Newt Gingrich and so many others that are going to join us, so we hope you'll join us on that.
I'd like to say just a word about the framework with North Korea that Ambassador Gallucci signed this morning. This is a good deal for the United States. North Korea will freeze and then dismantle its nuclear program. South Korea and our other allies will be better protected. The entire world will be safer as we slow the spread of nuclear weapons.
With a deal to stop the progress of Iran's nuclear program and roll it back in key areas. We have achieved the framework for that deal. And it is a good deal, a deal that meets our core objectives. This framework would cut off every pathway that Iran could take to develop a nuclear weapon.
They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen. He has been very threatening, beyond a normal statement. And as I said, they will be met with fire, fury, and frankly, power, the likes of which this world has never seen before. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's going to wrap things up for today. We got a very, very important Hannity tonight, 10 Eastern on the Fox News Channel. How do you deal with a nuclear-armed North Korea that has missile capacity? It's a worst-case scenario. Newt Gingrich weighs in. John Bolton weighs in tonight. Also, the latest on the Lynch tarmac meeting controversy. We'll get to that. Stephen A. Smith, Jay Sekulow, Greg Jarrett tonight, and Sheriff David Clark. You can't have a better lineup. The latest breaking news, 10 Eastern. Set your DVR. Thanks for being with us. We'll be back here tomorrow.